kinds of things that we talked about, that what we're talking about here this weekend is really not the kumbaya version of spirituality. It's not just about feeling good for a short period of time and then we get recharged and go back to our life. It's not. That's nice. But what we're actually talking about here is something deeper, more challenging too. And it's not all fun and games. It's really a process of subtraction, much more than any kind of process of addition. What's real is already present. Our job is to sort of clear away the overburden so that we can actually notice what's already present. You know what I mean by overburden? It's sort of a mining term, mountaintop mining. They have to clear away the top of the mountain first to get at the coal. That's what I mean by overburden. And I also said yesterday a number of times, it's, what we seek is already present. That's as true as almost any statement can get. But it's not put out there just as something to believe in, right? No matter who says it. It's not something to say, oh, so-and-so said it's already present, so hey, I can just go back to sleep and take it easy. Because that actually does yourself a disservice. Because we're abdicating our authority to somebody else. May or may not be true, maybe their experience, but if it's not our own experience, really, what difference does it make? Just reading about somebody else's experience may be inspiring. That's useful, right? It may inspire us to say, oh, maybe this is possible. Maybe I can actually go down this path too, see what's there for myself, on my own authority. So listening to someone talk about this can be useful in the sense that it can save you some time. Right? Just in the suggestion of it's more fruitful to look in this direction, less fruitful to go down this path. That can be helpful information. But we still have to walk down the path ourselves. Somebody who's talking about this can point to the doorway, but you still have to open the door yourself and walk through it. I mean, nobody's going to do this for you. So when we talk about it in that vein, it can sound like, I'm not sure I want to get into that. That sounds like a long, hard journey. So, can be, doesn't have to be. It all depends on how tightly we're holding on. Not holding on tightly, easy. I think one of the hindrances to spiritual awakening is the commonly held belief that it's rare, that it's just for special people. If you just happen to be born on a lotus leaf, then maybe, But it's really just the next belief, right? That belief that it's rare, it's far away, it's not for me, it's as good as any other belief in obscuring what's present. If we believe, it's sort of like a good magician, they point your attention over here, and meanwhile they're doing something else over here. If our attention is here on the belief that it's rare, for special people, you have to do 10,000 years of good karma, and we believe that, any belief will do. Can't be here, can't be now, but maybe there and then. Somebody else. I'll follow in their footsteps. I'll act like they act. Talk like they talk. All giving away our potential. So I thought, after spending yesterday sort of where it felt like some of the challenges, difficulties in seeing through this sense of personal self, seeing the challenges of that, I thought it would be fair, balanced, to do a sales pitch for enlightenment here. So one morning a while ago, I just jotted down a number of things, so excuse me by using some notes, because there's a number of them here. But it's just under the heading of Fruits of Spiritual Awakening. Okay? And they're different and in a sense more practical than in many ways spiritual awakening has been presented to us. Presented to us as a one-time event, before and after, and afterwards it's a state of elevated bliss, no problems, just sort of smooth sailing, right? I remember in high school sort of being envious of adults because they didn't have to do homework after school. As soon as I got to adulthood, man, that'd be great, wouldn't it? No challenge. I mean, just come home at 5 o'clock. Oh, geez, that'd be great. Right, Colleen? Just smooth. No effort. But it's not like that. I mean, life does go on. Our perspective changes. So anyway, I'll just start out here, so we'll see how it goes. So this is Fruits of Spiritual Awakening. This is in no particular order. One is less drama in our lives. Right? Anybody fascinated with drama? The next wrenching story, something that has to be resolved, interpersonal things that just we get involved in. There seems to be no resolution. It goes on and on and on. And we play our part. The other person plays their part, sure. But we play our part. That's how the drama continues. We're fascinated. We're getting at the meat of real living. We watch soap operas, right? There tends in situations to be more of a response than a reaction. So what I mean by that, reaction is where we just come back to a situation just out of prior conditioning, just out of memory. So we tend to react to the same situations in the same way. Someone gets angry at me, I'll get angry back, or I, retreat into a puddle, or whatever our pattern is. And so that reaction is not, there's nothing that's appropriate to the situation, whereas a response is really being available, being fresh, being open, and whatever's appropriate to the situation. It may be to your benefit, maybe not, but it's just what's, you could say for the highest and best good of that situation, what is needed from you. Maybe it's not to say anything. Maybe it's to say something. There's no rule here, but it's coming at it with a freshness rather than just a reactivity. Yeah. We tend to have more energy, just straight old physical energy. I would say primarily, there may be some, as David suggested yesterday, maybe some physiological changes, that may be true. But also, just that we're not squandering what energy we do have on psychological spinning. Same patterns over and over, replay the same stories, hope for a different ending, right? Just the amount of energy that we squander daily on worrying about things that may not ever happen, regretting things that happened 20 years ago. All of that expenditure of energy is just, we see that there's no real payoff there. So that energy is available for other things. So I don't know if this is absolutely true or not, but there's some people that claim to know that at birth we're given a certain amount of life energy, and then we choose how to spend that. I don't know if that's true, but I do know if you wake up in the morning and you squander your energy, you feel tired in the afternoon. I do know that. There seems to be more enjoyment of just the mundane things, right? We're not waiting for the special occasion to feel really good. It's not like we're not putting that demand on existence. We're okay with just the mundane things of life, which when we stop insisting that they be otherwise, are actually quite extraordinary. So it's just allowing ourselves to settle in and enjoy life as it shows up, rather than putting a demand on it, trying to manage it, trying to max out our happiness quotient. We lose our sense of having to protect ourselves from life. Right? Can you feel what I mean by that? We acknowledge that sometimes difficult things will happen. It doesn't mean that we have to seek them out, sort of punish ourselves in some way by seeking out the most unpleasant situation, or remain in a situation that's, just not working for us. I don't mean that, but we lose this sense of there's something here that's separate from life, and I have to keep my guard up. I have to keep the shield in place. Maybe close friends, a loving partner. Maybe I'll open it up a little bit. But generally, there's this sense of. So that's what gets lost. I would say that primarily because there's a trust in life. There's a trust in life as being a beneficent presence. We tend to be more creative, right? Less creative is when we're doing things just out of memory, things that we've always done before, maybe know how to do pretty well. We do them over and over again. They're familiar. That's all fine. But there's also the potential in life for being open to something new moving through us. And it doesn't have to be just art or just, something in the field of arts, what we usually think of creativity. It can just be creativity in, cooking a meal, creativity in playing with a young child, creativity in just allowing something new to flow through us that where we're not trying to manage it. We're not doing it out of our own memory. We're doing it. We're in a receptive state where something, sort of a fresh breeze can flow through. Yeah. This is a good one for post-Christmas. We tend to get along, have easier relationships with family. Right? It's where most of the conditioning arose from. So when we're back in those situations, most of the players fall back into the patterns that were established a long time ago, and we find ourselves pulled back into the role that we played at that time, whether parent or child or whatever. So it has this real gravitational pull back to, sometimes it's, unbelievable, how powerful that can be. I think it was Ram Dass once said, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a weekend with your parents. We find that situations rarely annoy us. We just see them as the next thing that's happening. That sense of annoyance, like, this shouldn't be happening, that pisses me off. It's just, it's a reaction, right? It's the first response, like something's interfering with how I would like life to be. So we find ourselves just not doing that, not because we're trying not to do it, just because it doesn't make any sense. We find we interfere less in other people's lives. That'll speak for itself. We find that we tend to enjoy solitude more. It's not this constant need for pulling us out of a sense of quiet. Whether it's the next email, the next text, the next dinner engagement, the next movie, the next... where we're always looking for the next thing to forget about ourselves for a short time. So there's just that still may be enjoyable. It's not like life shouldn't be enjoyed, or but there's also a sense of when it's just quiet, alone time, that's okay too. We can enjoy that. In the same vein, just distractions tend to be less interesting, tend to have less pull. There's a conditioned response there, so that one can take a while to settle down, but it will. We're okay with change. Right? Buddha said 2,500 years ago, life is impermanent. Anybody have a argument with that? It seems obvious, right? And yet, there's that tendency to resist change, right? To hold on, this can't be happening. I don't want this to happen. I can't. I don't agree with this. It may be happening, but that movement of change is, it's actually aliveness. If everything was just static and nothing ever changed, nothing ever challenged us, nothing ever inspired us, nothing ever caused us to look at life differently, where's the motivation to look at anything with new eyes? So change is, it is essential to life, is essential to movement. Life doesn't stand still. It is constantly moving, constantly changing. It's only us that's in resistance to that. Fear drops away. If that was the only thing that it did, that would be enough, right? So that fear, when we really look at it, there's a survival, sense of survival at the root of it. And there's physical survival. We'll just set that aside for the moment. But there's the way the fear operates is a much bigger part of our life than just physical survival. Right? It has to do with our sense of who we are, whether we're appreciated, whether we're respected, whether we're loved, whether we're not, whether we love ourselves, whether we don't, whether we enjoy ourselves, whether we don't. A whole spectrum of psychology, emotions, thoughts, that whole morass. And how we try to manage that is based on fear. It's out of fear. If I let go and just allowed me to be as I am, allow the other person to be as they are, what would that look like? Who would I be? How could I function? So when that personal will to try to manage everything, including our own thoughts, our own emotions, our own experience, the other person's thoughts, emotions, and experiences, all of that, when we're willing to step out of that managerial role that we think that we can do, but we can't. Sort of like, I know this isn't legal anymore, but when I was younger, they used to have, in the front seat, they used to have a little plastic steering wheel over in the passenger side where little kids could sit there and pretend they're driving the car. Sort of like that. Where we think we're managing our emotions, our thoughts, and we're not really. But it's fear-based, right? All of that movement is fear-based. Fear of how life will appear in the next moment, tomorrow, next year. And so we try to manage it all. So when we're willing to trust life enough to allow it to unfold as it will, with or without our approval, then there's a relaxation. We find that there's more synchronistic events. Again, because we're not trying to manage everything. Make sense? There's more a sense of abundance, right? Again, it has to do with trust. Trust in the world, trust in life, trust in the goodness of this creation. You know, if you look around, you tend to see people that view life as non-abundant, as there's scarcity and I've got to get what I need for myself. You look at people that approach life like that, and their life does look sparse, does look impoverished in a way. You know, they may have as much food to eat as someone else who has an outlook of just life seems to be abundant. I look around, things are provided. I still have to do my share, but you know, I trust that what I need tomorrow will be there tomorrow. It's a different outlook. We talked yesterday about, you know, friends and relationships may change. You know, what's authentic will tend to remain, what's not will tend to fall away, sometimes painfully. There's more just a natural sense of optimism. So what we're talking about, notice that I'm not talking about mind-blowing bliss. Right? Someone once asked Eckhart Tolle about that, you know, what about bliss? And he said, yeah, when it's first encountered, there's that sense of bliss. And it can last a while. It can last months, maybe a year. Try to stretch it out as long as you can. But eventually it'll settle down. It's really, what Eckhart said was that it's not a permanent state, but it's a relief from the way life felt prior to that. So, and then after a while you get used to that sense of lightness, you could say. And so it no longer feels extraordinary, it just feels like, no, this is actually what life looks like. When we're not carrying around a 100-pound backpack of... we tend to be more gentle and compassionate with ourselves and with others. Not as a practice, right? I'm doing this as a practice in order to improve my odds at some future state. Not compassion like that. Compassion just because we recognize that what's present here is fully present in the other person. How would you not act compassionate? It's not a willful thing, it's just the most obvious thing in the world. Life seems to flow more. It feels more like, you know, at some time in our life it feels like we're bucking up against life. So there's always feels like there's a, you know, the wind in our face, and we're, you know, sort of fighting our way upstream. Sorry to mix metaphors here, but which feels different than a sense of more like wind at our back, you know, sort of going with the flow. Life is easier that way because we're not positioned to it. You know, we've come more into alignment with how life is moving, and that has energy, that has possibility, that has potential. We tend to be in a state of gratitude for no apparent reason. We don't need a particular circumstance and say, oh, okay, now I feel grateful. It's just a general sense of gratitude for whatever's arising. even the difficult things. Right? We can see through, as much effort as we make to see through, the dualistic nature of existence, um, right or wrong, light or dark, good and evil, hot and cold, peace and war, all the dualism that we see in the world, we see the value in it. I'm not saying that war is good. I'm saying that war happens. It happens out of our belief in separation. I'm a separate self, I'm a separate nation, I'm right, they're wrong. I was on retreat with Eckhart just a few days after 9/11, and someone, of course, asked him about that. And what he said was that the movement to fly planes in the buildings was not, in essence, different than a belief in I'm right, I know what's right. Just a matter of degree. Same movement, just a matter of degree. So we see that that dualism in the world is a way that we learn about who we are. Without challenges, we never have the opportunity to see. It's sort of like that, the mythical hero's journey. Without the challenges, the innocent person that sets off on their quest doesn't know what they're capable of, doesn't know how they'll stand up in the face of danger, what choices they'll make, whether it'll all work out or not. So without those challenges, without those risks, we don't find out. We don't find out until we're faced with choices, and we get to see. We get to make mistakes. So when we really look at that, we don't resent that dualism. We see it's an essential part of our journey. We find that we have a deeper sense of connection with nature just because we realize that we're not really separate from it in any way. I was reading the other day that a banana has 65% of our DNA. Mouse is 90. So we can see that it's a very human-centered belief that we're at the apex of evolution, the highest form, in the image of God, right? Looks like us. I mean, we can make a reasonable argument that a tree is actually much more in tune with nature can do things that we can't even begin to do. More at peace, more in tune with their environment. I mean, we can make a reasonable argument there. There's also a sense that this awakening is not special. So it's presented as a special attainment. And it can feel like that initially, hopefully not for very long, but it can feel like that. Like I've worked, finally. The problem, and it's gotten, just that feeling has gotten a lot of people that actually have awakened into a lot of trouble, simply because they feel special. Buddha was reported to have said upon his awakening, "I and all beings have simultaneously awakened." Right? You see it here, you see it everywhere. You see it here, you see it as present already everywhere. It's not special. I want to be special, right? I want to be separate. I like oneness, but I really want to be like... seeking ceases. Right? Looking, you finally find what you were looking for. Seeking obviously ceases, right? You don't go on looking. If you lost your car keys and you find your car keys, you don't go on looking for them, right? It's the last thing you do. Oh, car keys. So, but that sense is a relief, because that seeking feels like it's coming from a sense of lack, a lack of wholeness. So when that's revealed as being present, always has been present, but when it's actually revealed in a way that's indisputable, not as a mental conception, then that sense of lack just evaporates. That, right? We find that that sort of inner guidance, that sort of movement within us that we know is true even when we don't actually like the direction it's pushing us, we realize that it's beneficial to trust that more and more. We may not understand it, we don't know how it arises, we may not even know where it's going. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't justify itself. It doesn't give you the pros and cons. It's more like just that way, a little more that way. So that becomes more and more trusted. We find that you've all heard of what they call it when they put the stickers on your mirror. Yeah. So the opposite of that also works equally well, which is the negative defamations, the negative things that we say to ourselves. Oh, you're a jerk, you know. Repeat that 10 times a day. But we do that too. That also has power, right? Or we say it about the other person. Has as much power as the positive ones, maybe more, right? Negative things. Oh, you can't. all those kind of statements. So those have power. I mean, it's reinforcing a belief. So we just see that those aren't actually true. So they tend to just diminish over time. We lose the questioning about whether we're doing the right thing. Right? It's more like life just moves, and we're not always questioning that. Feels more like just a natural next thing to do. It seems obvious. It seems right. There's not a lot of mental debate about whether I should or shouldn't. It's more like just a gentle movement in that direction. And we're not second guessing ourselves. Well, should I really be living this life now, or should I be? I'm not saying that sometimes major changes in our life don't happen, but it's more like, doing the next obvious thing rather than, going back and forth about what I should do, what I shouldn't do. Am I doing the right thing? Am I not? It's actually a fairly easy test to see whether you're doing the right thing or not. You can see how you're spending your time. If you're spending your time doing what you truly want to do, perfect. But if you notice that what I really want to do is this, but I spend all my time doing this, that's something to look at. So that's how we tell what we're actually devoted to. We can tell ourselves, well, I'm really devoted to waking up in this lifetime, but I've got Netflix on 8 hours a day, so. We tend to be more authentic because we're not pretending to be somebody that we're not. There's no payoff there. We enjoy life as is rather than only waiting for those peak moments. We find that happiness isn't dependent on circumstances. Right? It's not our peace and contentment doesn't fluctuate based on outside circumstances. Okay, this is what in the Bible they talk about peace beyond all understanding, right? Peace that doesn't make any sense, it's just there. It's not dependent on circumstances. That's nice, by the way. There tends to be a sense of being comfortable in our own skin, sort of at home. We've gone on a journey, we've come home, we put our feet up, fire's there, cup of tea, at ease in ourselves. This may not evolve right away, but usually there'll be arise some desire to serve, to give back, not out of not out of hope for future rewards. I'm doing this in hopes of heaven. It can feel like it's the only thing left to do, right? We've lived this life, we lived it fully, we've recognized something, we've recognized how life moves. And then we can offer that somehow. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be, helping a family friend, taking care of a child, doing whatever. Tending a garden. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but it's a giving back to life, a recognition of life as an amazing venture, and just in recognition of that. Tends to be a love and appreciation of other people, however they show up. Doesn't actually mean that we want to spend hours and hours with everybody. It just means when that opportunity is there, we recognize there's another manifestation of the one showing up like this today. Beautiful. There tends to be, I'm just about done here, there tends to be a deep relaxation that all is well. The world may, seem on the brink of extinction, but all is well. This isn't, it sounds like a Pollyanna statement, like, oh, all is well. But it's really a recognition of the underlying say indestructibility of consciousness, of life itself. Humans, maybe not. Well, the jury's out on that one. But life, life is unfolding. And finally, I'd say just a sense of being at home in the world, like being at ease in the world, feeling like it's not a foreign territory, just being at ease with it, allowing each of us to sort of move through life, express ourselves freely, see where that takes us. It can take us beyond, way beyond what we thought we were capable of. So anyway, that's the list I came up with that morning. So.